think about the last thing you started with real fire and dropped inside a month. You told yourself it wasn't the right time, or the idea wasn't good enough. But the idea was never the problem. You keep waiting for a signal that never arrives. More savings, more confidence, a clearer plan. That signal doesn't exist because readiness isn't a feeling you wait for, it's a muscle you build by moving. A man landed in Los Angeles in his 20s with almost nothing, no fluent English, no network, no safety net. He worked the gas station shift, then a coffee shop, then janitorial work, stacking hours until his days had no seams left. He wasn't building a brand in those years. He was learning what people actually bought, what made them stop and touch a rack, what made them walk past without looking. Nobody was watching him do it. He noticed something small most people would never bother to track. The gas station and the coffee shop next to a car dealership both did steady business no matter the economy. He asked himself a plain question: why does one place always have customers? With savings that would barely cover rent in some cities, he opened a tiny clothing store in 1984. No investors, no cushion, just a lease he had to make good on with actual dollars, actual weeks. That first store didn't fail. It didn't just survive, it pulled in more revenue in 12 months than most new shop owners see in 5 years. But the number wasn't luck, it was every unpaid hour before it, finally paying rent. His model wasn't about having the trendiest item, it was about moving inventory fast, restocking constantly, keeping prices low enough that buying felt easy and consequence free. Speed became the entire strategy. He didn't wait to master store one. Within a year, he opened another, then another, learning each new lesson in real time, in front of real customers, with real money on the line every single day. There is no version of this story where the fear disappeared. He kept opening stores anyway, and doing the work anyway, because he decided the fear was just weather, not a wall. He wasn't credentialed. He didn't have connections handed to him. What he had was a willingness to do the unglamorous thing every single day until it compounded into something enormous. That feeling of not being ready isn't information about your ability. It's just your brain avoiding the discomfort of being bad at something in public, which is exactly what he accepted every day for years. Staying in the planning phase feels safe because nothing can go wrong there. But nothing can go right there either. The safety is real, and so is the stagnation. They arrive together every time. Somewhere along the way, you absorb the idea that competent people feel sure before they start. That's backwards. Certainty is usually the last thing to arrive, not the first. It's built by doing, not felt before doing. Each time you open your phone, instead of opening the file, you're casting a small vote for staying the same. One vote doesn't matter. 1,000 of them is a life you didn't build on purpose. Research, planning, watching videos like this one, they feel productive because they're adjacent to action. But adjacent isn't the same as doing, and only doing moves the number that actually matters. Underneath the procrastination is usually a quieter fear that if you try fully and it doesn't work, it proves something bad about you. So you protect yourself by never fully trying. Opening store after store meant risking over and over the possibility that he wasn't as capable as he hoped. He did it anyway, because the alternative, never knowing, was worse to him. The version of success you picture is the billion-dollar chain. What actually happens first is folding shirts, counting a register twice, sweeping a floor at midnight for months with no proof it's working. There is no highlight reel for the beginning. If you're waiting for the work to feel meaningful before you commit to it, you'll wait through your entire 20s and 30s. The early stores likely had mistakes he never talks about: wrong inventory, wrong pricing, wasted trips. Growth doesn't skip the clumsy phase, it runs straight through it. 2,600 was real money to a man with 3 jobs. Every dollar spent on that first lease was a dollar he couldn't get back if it failed. Risk doesn't stop feeling like risk once you have more to lose. It just changes shape. Family and friends often can't see the vision until it's already proven because they're picturing your past self, not your next self. Waiting for their belief means waiting for permission that may never come. The hardest stretch usually lands right before things turn, when the work has piled up but the results haven't shown yet. That gap is where almost everyone stops, one step from where it starts working. His entire model ran on razor thin profit per item, which meant no room for waste, no room for laziness, no room for a bad week. Low margins demand relentless precision, not relentless hustle alone. What runs one store cleanly can collapse across 50. Systems that were fine when he could see everything himself stopped being fine once he couldn't be in every building at once. He had to become a different kind of leader than the one who opened store one. Someone who could trust systems and people, not just instinct and long nights. That shift is uncomfortable because it means giving up control. The hungry, scrappy version of you that starts the thing isn't the same version needed to run the thing at scale. Holding on to the old identity too long becomes its own kind of limit. The fast, cheap, always new model that built the empire eventually drew scrutiny over how sustainable and how fair that speed really was. The thing that makes you fast rarely stays free of cost. Reaching $1 billion in revenue didn't mean an easy life. It meant lawsuits, debt, expansion mistakes, and eventually bankruptcy filings years later. The mountain doesn't end, the terrain just changes. You picture arriving somewhere solid and safe. What actually happens is you trade today's hard problems for tomorrow's harder ones, which is still the deal worth taking. Every one of those hard truths existed for him before he had proof it would work. He started with the hard part fully intact, not after it disappeared. You don't feel ready and then act. You act badly, adjust, act less badly, and somewhere in there, readiness shows up uninvited. Waiting for it first is waiting for a train that only arrives once you started walking the tracks. His first store was tiny and unglamorous. It didn't need to look like success. It needed to open on time and sell something today. Scale is a later problem, not a starting requirement. He built an empire on getting things out the door fast, not on getting them flawless first. Apply that to yourself. Ship the imperfect version and let real feedback improve it, instead of polishing something no one has seen. He didn't need a business degree to notice which shops stayed busy. Pay attention to what's actually working around you right now. The pattern is usually visible if you're willing to look instead of assume. 2,600 sounds small until you remember. It came from a man working three jobs. Your first bet doesn't have to be dramatic, it has to be real, and it has to be yours. The years before that first store weren't wasted, even though nothing was named yet. Every unglamorous shift was inventory. For what came later, treat your boarding hours the same way. He didn't have less fear than you. He just stopped treating fear as a stop sign and started treating it as a toll, annoying, present, and not actually blocking the road. When your work outgrows the version of you that started it, don't cling to the old title. Let go of the person who's just trying and become the person who runs it when the moment asks for it. Expect that the mountain gets taller, not shorter, the higher you climb. That's not a reason to stay at the bottom, it's just the accurate weather forecast for the whole climb. It's about the file you haven't opened, the message you haven't sent, the account you haven't started saving into. The size of the dream doesn't matter, the size of the delay does. Somewhere in your life, there's a small, doable, slightly scary first move you've been circling for months. It doesn't need funding or permission, it needs a date. You didn't need this video to tell you what it is. You needed a reminder that the discomfort of starting is smaller than the years of not starting. He didn't have the luxury of free time and still built something from nothing. You likely have more free hours than he did. The shortage was never time, it's decision. No one is going to tell you it's your turn. There is no email, no sign, no green light coming. There's just the next available hour and what you choose to do with it. You've probably run the failure scenario in your head 50 times and the success scenario 0. Flip that ratio, even slightly, and notice how much easier the first step becomes. Not the whole plan, not the perfect plan. The smallest true action that moves the thing forward before you sleep tonight. That's the entire method, repeated for years. Sit with that question honestly for a second because the answer is probably shorter and simpler than you've been making it. Say it out loud if you have to. Naming it is the first move. Tell me the one thing you keep postponing, not the dream version, the real, small, specific one. I want to see it named because naming it is how it stops being vague enough to avoid.